Hello, awesome supporters. It's Kim here on Friday, June 7th, which is officially the last day of school. And I kind of feel like I look frazzled because I'm a little bit frazzled only because I had to pack up my room. I'm going to be switching rooms. You've probably heard that on the podcast. And I am moving all of my stuff. And I say all of my stuff because I actually didn't have that much stuff to move. Although I did have a lot of stuff to get rid of, you just don't really realize the kind of junk that you accumulate. And pretty much every teacher does this. So as a first teacher, you'll slowly start to build, your collection of materials, and after a while you'll realize that you don't need some of them but you just keep them just in case. So I had a lot of just in case stuff that I pretty much didn't end up using. So I threw that stuff out. Well, I recycled it so that I didn't need to move it. I mean, it's just kind of like when you move to another house, you get to purge everything. And I realized also that, it's really liberating to just be more efficient. A lot of my materials are online, and so I don't need to have paper copies of everything. So that was a good thing. What was really cool too in the packing process is that I rediscovered some materials that I'd forgotten about. Materials that I used a few years ago, and they were like group work type things, like sorting tangible stuff, because I put so much effort into doing stuff digitally. And so I've forgotten how effective they were in terms of teaching things like Greek and Latin roots and prefixes and how to put together a paragraph, just things like that. So I found those and I was really excited to find them because I'm definitely going to be using them again. Also, in this whole packing thing, I had gone over that in the end of the year Sanity Saver. A couple of tips that I'm going to pull from that course. Number one, when you're packing, it's really important to write down what's in the box as much as possible. And it's a good idea to seal your boxes so that your stuff actually stays in there. And then write down your name, obviously, and the room that you're moving to. So if you're moving like I am, that's a good idea. Now, even if you're not moving, I would still write the room number down. And here's why. So there have been several times when the custodians over the summer will clean out, like deep clean the classrooms. And so they take out all the furniture and they just take everything out so that they can sweep and wax the floors if you have floors, or shampoo the carpets, and then they have to put it all back. Well, before I started labeling my boxes, sometimes my boxes would end up in other rooms because I just assumed that they would put them back. But when they're doing 2, 3, 4 classrooms at a time and everything is out in the hallway, sometimes they forget what goes where. So it's a good idea to label your boxes with the room number and your name. Also, this is a really good time to give the custodian a heads up, in terms of repairs. The summer is really a good time for them to do those repairs so that it doesn't disrupt your classroom. I've had repairs done in my class before when it was during the school year, and you can just imagine how distracting that was and how irritating it was. I mean, yes, thank you for fixing the broken window, but could you do it after school? So the summertime is the best time for that. So if you have anything that needs fixed, in my classroom right now that I'm leaving, where they have the Ethernet ports in the wall to get internet, the cover is coming off, but there's no screws, so it's just kind of like popping out. So just things like that. It's a good idea to do that now. Also, whether you are a new teacher or you've been teaching for a few years, this is a really good time to think about how this year went and what you might want to tweak next year. And I talk about this a lot on the podcast, as you probably know. So if you've been teaching for a couple of years or you have at least 1 year under your belt, think about how did it go this year and what would you do to improve. And I actually created some resources and some podcast episodes to go with this. So if you listen to episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6, which goes over your classroom setup, it goes over your policies, your grading, classroom management, and then I'm going to put a link here with this particular post so that because I created a workbook to go with those podcast episodes. So it's good to do this frequently. I do this yearly. What went well? What do you want to improve? So for example, if classroom management was difficult last year, if you had some kids that were out of control, what are you going to do better next year? Maybe not better, that's such a bad word. What can you tweak to improve it next year? You know what I mean? If we just keep doing the same thing, then it's not going to get better. So we want to try to mix things up and maybe do some research and see how we can change things, reach out to other veteran teachers like myself and, find out, okay, what can I do so that this part of my teaching or my day will be better. So that's episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6. And again, I'm going to put that resource in the links. And finally, I just got done with part 1 of a series on healthy teacher habits. So on Monday, I released an episode about intuitive eating. And if you haven't listened to that, I highly suggest that you do that. As teachers, a lot of times we kind of sacrifice like our eating habits and our health sometimes because of the overwhelm and time that we spend on teaching. So this particular episode discusses how we can realistically have better eating habits. And then on Monday, the second part of the series is on exercise. And so that's going to discuss how we can fit in exercise, especially if we hate exercise, if we drag our feet, or if we promised that we would start exercising in the beginning of the year and we failed, how can we use the summer to kind of get back into the groove? And then the week after that is going to be on how to build a healthy lifestyle, on building healthy habits. So it kind of puts together everything that I've discussed in terms of intuitive eating and exercise, and how can we actually make it so that it sticks, so that we don't just ditch it when it gets hard. So that's what's coming up. And I think I mentioned this in my last update, but also coming up is, and at the end of this month, is an episode from the people at donorschoose.org. And so I know that I have some things that I want to request. And I think a lot of teachers, especially, you don't have a lot of money in the beginning of the year, or when you start out, with your teaching career, and you might want to acquire some things for your classroom. Maybe you want to set up this awesome library, and there are people out there who are constantly funding these projects. So I asked someone from donorschoose.org to come in and help us write a really good proposal and one that's going to get funded. So make sure that you come back for that. And I really appreciate you being an awesome supporter and supporting the podcast. If you think that anybody else would benefit from listening to this podcast or would also benefit from being an awesome supporter, please share the podcast and this page with them, and that would be really awesome. So have a great weekend, and I'll be back in a couple weeks.